This is a true story. The names have not been changed. On the 1st of December 2007, a man walked into a London police station and told the officer at the desk that he thought he might be John Darwin. He said he couldn't remember the last 5 years. He said he was confused. The officer looked up the name. John Darwin, declared dead, March 2002, canoe accident, North Sea. The file was 5 years old. The man standing at the desk was 57, looked healthy, and had a return flight to Panama, booked for Thursday. He didn't have amnesia. He had run out of options. John Darwin was a prison officer turned canoe instructor who lived with his wife Anne and their 2 sons in a terraced house at For the Cliffs, Eton Carew, a small coastal town in County Durham, England, where the wind comes off the North Sea cold enough to make your eyes water. By 2001, he was deep in debt. The house had a second mortgage he couldn't service. He'd borrowed against a rental property he couldn't let. The numbers didn't work, and John Darwin was not the kind of man who knew how to tell his wife that. On the 1st of March 2002, John Darwin paddled his canoe into the North Sea and didn't come back. A debris field was found the same afternoon. Fragments of red fiberglass. A paddle. The Coast Guard searched for 3 days. Anne Darwin reported her husband missing that evening. She described him as an experienced canoeist. She said she couldn't understand what had gone wrong. She was pale, composed. She answered every question the police asked. She already knew the answers. Anne Darwin buried an empty coffin. She wore black. She accepted condolences from neighbors, from John's colleagues, from her son's friends' parents. She cried at the right moments. She told people she still couldn't believe he was gone. She claimed the life insurance, 2 policies, totaling £250,000. She told the insurers she was a widow struggling to keep the family home. She was. The man whose policies she was claiming had been living in a bedsit at the back of that home since April. The bedsit was at the back of number 3. The Cliff, the house next door. John Darwin had converted it himself before his disappearance. It had a single bed, a bathroom, a small kitchen, and a door that opened onto the shared back garden he had played in with his sons. The distance between that door and his own front doorstep was approximately 90 meters. His sons, Mark and Anthony, visited their mother regularly. They sat in the kitchen. They talked about missing their father. He was, at that moment, on the other side of the wall. Mark was 23 when his father disappeared. Anthony was 20. They had grown up believing the North Sea took him on a Tuesday morning in March. They grieved genuinely. They supported their mother. They checked in on her. They helped her manage the finances. They did not know that the finances included a £250,000 insurance payout from a man who was alive. They did not know that when they hugged their mother in the hallway at number 4, their father was sometimes standing in the garden 12 meters away, listening to the sound of their voices through the walls. Anne Darwin was not a victim. She had been told by the end of that 1st April, 5 weeks after the disappearance. John had appeared at her door one night and told her he was alive and that he needed her help. She had let him in. She had not called the police. She had continued to process the life insurance claims. She had lied to her sons, to the investigators, to the coroner who declared him legally dead. She had done this for 5 years and 2 months before anyone outside that house knew the truth. By 2006, the bedsit arrangement was no longer sustainable. John had been hiding for 4 years. They sold the properties. They converted the insurance money into a new life. They chose Panama, warm, relatively anonymous, developing fast, the kind of place where English people with cash and no questions could buy land and build. John Darwin entered Panama using a passport obtained under a false identity. He and Anne posed for a photograph in an estate agent's office in 2006. They were smiling. The photograph was taken on a digital camera. The estate agent uploaded it to their website. Mark Darwin was clearing out paperwork in late 2007 when he searched his father's name online. It was something he did occasionally. He found the Panama estate agent's website. He found the photograph, his father and his mother standing in an office, smiling, dated 2006, 4 years after his father's death. He called his brother. He called his mother. Anne told him the photograph was a fake. Mark Darwin did not believe her. He forwarded the photograph to the Daily Mirror. He forwarded it to the police. He sat alone in a room and tried to decide what he thought about the fact that his mother had looked him in the eye at his father's funeral and cried. John Darwin walked into the City of London police station on December 1st, 2007, knowing the photograph had been found. He told them he had amnesia. He said he'd been living rough, couldn't remember who he was, had only recently recovered his memory. The detective interviewing him noted that his clothes were clean, his shoes were new, and he had a return flight to Panama in his jacket pocket. The amnesia story lasted approximately 40 minutes. Then John Darwin told the truth, or most of it. Mark and Anthony Darwin did not find out their mother's involvement from the police. They found out from a newspaper. The Daily Mail ran the story before the formal charges were filed. Their mother, the woman who had held them when they cried, who had accepted their help, who had let them believe she was grieving, had known since the 1st April. She had known for 5 years and 2 months. Neither son attended her sentencing. Mark Darwin later said that losing his mother felt worse than losing his father because his mother had been a choice. John Darwin was sentenced to 6 years and 3 months for obtaining a mortgage by deception and obtaining a passport by deception. Anne Darwin received 6 years and 6 months, longer than her husband, because the judge found she had played an active role across a longer, sustained period of deception. She served 3.5 years. When she was released, her sons did not meet her at the prison gate. John served a similar term. They divorced while both were in prison. The house at 4. The Cliff Seton Carew was sold to cover the debt that had started all of it. Anne Darwin gave an interview years later. She said she had been frightened of John, that she'd felt she had no choice. She said she had been a victim of his manipulation. Some people believed her. Her sons did not. There is a version of this story where Anne Darwin is a woman trapped by a controlling husband who presented her with an impossible situation on a dark April night. There is another version where she is a woman who chose money and a marriage over her children's grief for 5 years. Both versions are supported by the facts. This is what makes it impossible to look away. John Darwin's debt, at the time of his disappearance, was approximately £70,000. He could have declared bankruptcy. He could have sold the house. He could have told his wife the truth and faced it together. Instead, he chose to die, to make his family grieve a lie, to let his sons grow up without a father, to spend 4 years hiding in a room 12 meters from people who loved him. The 63 days between his disappearance and the moment he knocked on Anne's door at night. No one knows what he thought about in those 63 days. He has never said. John Darwin is alive. He lives quietly. He has given a few interviews, written a book, tried to explain himself. His sons have, in some form, begun to speak to him again. The man who chose debt over their childhoods. Anne Darwin, they have not fully forgiven. The grave that Anne tended for 5 years, placing flowers and crying beside an empty box, was exhumed, and the plot returned. There is a question I want to leave with you, and I want you to answer it honestly in the comments. Who was worse? John, who invented the lie, or Anne, who chose to maintain it for 5 years while looking her sons in the eye? There is no correct answer. That's exactly why I'm asking. Subscribe. We tell one story like this every week, the ones that don't let you sleep.